Welcome to the Three Old Goalies podcast. Three Old Goalies podcast is brought to you by thesquad.com. That's the squad with a W.com. Music for the Three Old Goalies podcast is provided by the Floodgate Operators. Be sure to check out their new album, available for download on Spotify. Have your earmuffs on the ready, as parental advisory is important to us. The Three Old Goalies is not meant for goalkeepers under the age of 17 years old. Now I turn it over to EV for tonight's
thrilled
episode.
That you're here. Unfortunately, this is what we're calling the Pele episode, which obviously in reverence of possibly one of the greatest, if not the greatest, sports icon of all time. As everybody knows, Pele passed away earlier this week, and we are joined as usual by our producer, Ryan Sparks, our co-host, Greg Deutsch, our panelist extraordinaire, John Boa, and a very special guest tonight, a gentleman who has literally been involved in all aspects of soccer in the United States, Bill Nuttall. Bill was an All-American player in college. Went on to play in the NASL, went on to coach Division I collegiately, and many probably coached at all levels. Was the general manager of the U.S. national team in 1984 when we hosted the World Cup and beyond that. Was always in the business of soccer, working for several distributorships such as Mitre, Diadora, and others, and is gracious enough to join us tonight because he actually played and saved a penalty against Pele when Pele was playing for the New York Cosmos in the NASL. So, Coach Bill, welcome. We really appreciate you taking time to join us, particularly on New Year's night, but thanks for doing it, and as I said, we're honored to have you on.
Oh, thanks, Eric. My pleasure to be here. This is always fun and enjoyable to talk soccer. And here we are coming out of a World Cup and Pele passing and all kinds of things happening in the world of soccer as we gear up for 2026, which will be kind of a fun thing. So thank you. My pleasure and my honor to be here. Good to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, well, We'll at this point in the show, because we don't want to take up too much of your time, Bill, but in this point of the show, we usually turn it over to Greg Deutsch, who's the Mike Wallace of soccer interviewers. And he will sort of lead us from here. And, as always, we'll all pipe in with various anecdotes when necessary. So go ahead, Greg.
All right.
Got some serious questions.
Some. I tell you, EV, when you hear some of this, you're going to be a little shocked. I know I was. I'll tell you that. So, welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
First, EV, a little correction. It was 1991 through 1994 that he was the general manager of the United States World Cup team. So, just make sure we have our facts. Sorry. All good. So, Bill, I want to.
He's younger than I thought he was. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. So the name of the high school where you started was pronounced Upper Merion. Do I have that right or not?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So that was in Pennsylvania.
Outside of Philly, yes.
Outside of Philly. And
so the Upper Merion is not where Kobe Bryant went, right? That's Lower Merion.
To Lower Merion. You are right.
Yeah. All right. There we go. A little direction today. So, back then, there weren't, as Evie and I have talked about, there weren't really a lot of colleges that had soccer. But in the case of the one you attended, Davis and Elkins, they certainly did. They didn't have football. It was a small school. But I think a lot of people will be surprised. Before you went there, you went to Brandywine Junior College. So tell us the track there and then how to get to D&E.
Well, I did so well in high school that I needed to share my knowledge with the junior college system. And they were quite happy and very, very happy to do that. So, and so they were blessed about how much information I could share with them. I think they were more amazed at how a guy like me could be that stupid. But I played in the ethnic leagues in Philadelphia, which was, the Ukrainian Nationals, the South Philly Italians, you name it. Everybody had a team in those Sunday leagues. And I played for the South Philly Italians. There was a guy by the name of Walt Cheswitz that also played on the South Philly Italians. And so I was playing there. And then I was also playing at Brandywine Junior College. The first year the school opened up, they didn't have a team. The second year they did have a team. And we were 0-9 at the junior with this Brandywine Junior College. I made first team junior college All-American goalkeeper. I would make about 45 saves a game. I used to go to practice to get some rest. It was as fast as I could kick the ball out, that would be coming right down my throat again. So anyway, I was fortunate enough to make All-American, went to the All-American banquet in New York City at the old Hotel Commodore when the NSCAA was still around before they changed their name, and when the NSCAA was in its infancy, really. They were great. And I met a guy by the name of Greg Myers, and he said, I'm putting together a team. We're NAIA. The president's giving us some money, and come down to West Virginia. And I'm like, West Virginia? Ooh, okay. And 6 hours from Philadelphia, and went down and loved the place, saw what Myers was trying to do. And then so I decided to enroll there, and enrolled there in 68. And we ended up winning the national championship that year. We beat Quincy. And then 69, we lost to Eastern Illinois. Shellis Hyman was on that team. In 1970, we went back and beat Quincy. And I was fortunate enough to make first team All-American in 1970. So, and at that time, it was interesting. There was none of this D1, D2. Oh, we don't play an NAIA team. We played Howard. Howard won it that year. We tied Howard, and Howard won it that year. I mean, it's just really some very, and so people, we just played. And so the All-American team was 33 players, first team, second team, honorable mention, and everybody was in that group. There wasn't now you have I guess D1, you have what, 3 teams, D2, 3,
Yeah.
whatever that is. So now, granted, there was less teams playing, so I'm not saying it's any better or worse. So that was the story. So we won 2 out of those 3 years. We won in the national championship, and at the time, Quincy was a strong team. They played St. Louis, SIU, all those guys. I mean, it was just a fun time to play against a lot of good teams.
Yeah. So EV, just so you knew this, he's in 3 Hall of Fames.
I knew that.
You knew that? Okay, I did.
And he has a field named after him at Davis and Elkins.
That's right.
Oh man,
Yeah.
You beat me to that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and Hank couldn't stand that, so Hank asked us to name the field at Warren Wilson after Hank. So Bill wouldn't get a step up on him. That's not true, folks. But
yeah, he had the whole thing. Yeah, and Hank was very instrumental in getting the field. We had a $1.2 million fundraising campaign to do a synthetic soccer field, synthetic turf field in West Virginia, which you need because it snows and rains, and lacrosse also uses it. So it had to be an all-purpose field with lights and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we're very fortunate there. And Hank was very instrumental in helping get us funded for that.
Yeah. In case you don't know who we're talking about, Hank Steinbrecher was a teammate of Bill Nuttall's. Just so a little background there, a friend of his, which we'll come back to. So Bill, you're an All-American in 1970, and the league back then in North America was the ASL. Doing a little research, never knew of this team, and usually I'm pretty good, but the Delaware Wings. I don't know, Evie, if you knew that team or not.
I didn't.
I have heard of the Delaware Wings. Yes.
I
Okay,
didn't.
how about you, John Boa?
No, and that's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Well, listen, guys, just remember, it's in Wilmington, Delaware. Soccer swings with the Delaware Wings.
Wow.
And our general manager was the bartender at a Topless bar in downtown Wilmington.
How slapshot is that?
And so our ball girls were the gals that were working at that bar. So it was soccer swings with Delaware Wings, they call it. But yeah. Anyway, a little side note.
So you were 3 years there, then 3 years in the NASL. Started with the Miami Toros, which little known fact here. And John Boa, you may know this. So the Miami Dolphins own the team, Joe Robbie, but back then you could not own another professional franchise. So his wife ran the team. Am I right, Bill? And how did that, probably she, signed off on everything you guys wanted, but any stories of those days, when she ran the club?
It was the old NASL days, and we were the Miami Toros, like you said. I came down 74. I rode the bench as there you go. I rode there's Van Taylor, who I understand you had with my roommate,
Wow.
Van Taylor.
Yeah.
And then Steve Ballman, number 12, was my roommate the first year. But he went to Penn. Steve went to Penn. And Steve and I were roommates, but I was entirely too smart for him. So that's why, an Ivy Leaguer had to find another roommate.
Who's the third goalkeeper?
It was Bob Wolf, another D&E guy who was living in Miami. And he could play just about every position on the team. So he was kind of like a utility guy. I had a bad I torn a ligament, was in a cast for 2 weeks. So Bob Wolf was the backup keeper to Van.
So in my research, I found a great photo, and I just want to know, one, if it's you, and two, what the heck was going on here. So let's take a look.
Uh-oh. That was probably Delaware Wings. There you go. Oh, yeah. Boy. Oh, boy.
So it looks like this was against the Philadelphia Spartans, according to the caption.
Yeah.
But the game that
was Wilmington.
The match that I really want to hear about is the match against the 72 exhibition against the U.S. Olympic team.
Yeah, that was with Shep Messick came to town. And we packed the high school stadium. We had like 2,800 people. And they were on their way to, I can't remember where they were on their way. Where the Olympics were they? Germany, Europe?
They were in Munich, yeah.
Yeah, they were on their way to, so we played there, and I can't remember. We lost to them 1-0 or something.
2-1 was the final.
2-1, yeah.
But here's the interesting part for me. You saw 38 shots in that game, according to the stat that I found.
Another slow day at the office.
I just saw that it was 38 shots, and then I was like, "Where's the final score? I gotta know."
Yeah,
I had a 2-1.
I had a couple of one of those deals where open your eyes and see where that save went. I didn't realize but yeah, they hammered us pretty good, and I had a pretty good day, and so I got some decent accolades in the paper, but they didn't take me. I said, "Get Messing out of there, bring me in. I'll even paint my nails." At the time, Messing had his fingernails painted every different color. He was like right on the edge, Not that he's not now, but I mean that was pretty unique for for that day and age. So yeah, and I think Shep had he took a nap and then he maybe had one save, but then we let one in. We got one. Our guy. Might have been Walt Chesowitz that scored, for all we know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But wow, that is some serious digging. I mean, would you Google Delaware Wings?
No. So I've been digging for the last few days. So I was trying to find because I know that in '76 you played against one of my favorite teams, and that's the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
Yep.
So I did find a picture of
Oh,
you
wow.
playing
I
against
mean,
the
I can't believe you're
Rowdies.
digging this stuff up here.
Wow, Ryan,
Good
that's
shot.
impressive.
So
That's
yeah, it's a
me
pretty.
missing a cross and
And
dimwit.
Dennis Witt.
We called him
Dennis
dimwit.
Witt.
Dennis Witt.
Yeah,
Dimwit.
yeah.
No, I don't know what was happening there. I'm sure it was a great save by me. I don't know, or a great whiff by me. I don't know what. Yeah, so we played Tampa, and so our first game in 1976 in April, we opened up with the Cosmos, and we had about a 7,000 seat stadium that we were playing in. We weren't going to play in the Orange Bowl, and they put about 9,000 people in there. It was really a unbelievable ruckus crowd. Of course, Pele's coming to town. What else can you say? And so we played them and we played them in Miami. So that was my first game. And of course, that was Pele's first official. No, wait a minute. Did he play the year before that a little bit, I think?
75, 76, 77.
Yeah. He had played about half a season.
Yeah.
And so we didn't catch them. We didn't catch the Cosmos at the end of the season, so that's why we missed them. So the next year we opened up with the Cosmos, which was great. So so yeah, that was the story. And we I can't remember, it was Dennis Stewart or somebody nicked a goal on us pretty fast, and we were down 1-0. And we were about the 80th minute, I think. We were playing well. I had a couple of saves. We were a little dangerous. I remember watching the ball coming down my right flank, their left. And I'm looking, saying, okay, no danger. I look back this way. There's nobody there. I look again. And all of a sudden the ball comes clipping across. And I look, and there's Pele at the top of the box with the ball. And I'm like, so I just went out and flattened him. Now, because there's no way I'm not going to let him dance around me and make me look like an idiot, right? And I said, he's going to score anyway. So if I flatten him, he takes a penalty, no harm, no foul. So I went out and flattened him, which normally would be a red card today.
Right.
I may have been tossed right away. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even get a card. It was just a penalty, And Pele, so that's what happened. So then he's up at the penalty area. And, he came over and he said, oh, my friend, the typical Brazilian, I'm like, don't be touching me, No, I didn't. I was fine with that. I'm like, what can I say? This guy's going to just ram it down my throat in a minute, which is okay. If Pele. So I'm standing there. I didn't really move. I danced a little bit. He walks up very, very slowly. He's waiting for me to do the normal routine. Keeper leans left, and he trickles one right by your right side. I didn't move. He keeps coming. I didn't move. And he finally gets there, and he puts almost nothing on the ball to my right. And it was easy. But yeah, because that's what happens when the keeper doesn't move, as guys know, and what you saw in the World Cup, guys are knocking it right down Main Street and all the fun stuff they do to a keeper. But I just said, I'm not going to move. I'm just going to see what happens. I'm just going to try to react. And
wow.
Yeah. So anyway, the game ended 5 minutes later. We lost 1-0. And that was that.
Bill, what was share with us what the environment was with Pele in the league? What were your thoughts? What were the reactions of people? Give us a little insight to that.
Well, crazy as that is, we played in Haiti several times, in Miami Toros. And so it was the Cosmos came to Haiti, us, and then there was 2 Haitian club teams playing. And Papa Doc was in charge then. So the place was very safe. You could walk around with $100 bills hanging out of your pocket. Nobody bothered you. I mean, you know how that was. Sadly, we know how oppressed everybody was and all that. And so here we are in Haiti with Pele. And I mean, the place is nuts. I mean, just people. So we were really, I'm glad the Miami Toros are here, but Pele's in town. They could give a flip. And fortunately, he was not in our hotel. They were at a hotel a couple miles away, or it would have been just crazy. Anyway.
Yeah,
So,
pretty interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So But I mean, it's a whole different level. Look at the guy. I mean, look at today. I mean, what did it do to the league? It was good and bad. I mean, let's face it. That started to escalate in the expenses. The payrolls went up. And all those things happened that started to erode with some of the weaker teams or the teams that didn't want to keep up with that. So that was probably the negative. The positive was it certainly woke up the rest of the world that either we were legit or we were a graveyard for old heroes of different parts of the world. But it definitely gave us some credibility. And I still think, and I would love to see at the World Cup level them do the old NASL shootout, 35 yards out, with the skilled players of the World Cup and the skilled keepers of that would be, rather than just ramming it down somebody's throat from 12 yards out, right? I mean, I would love to see the skill level of that. I mean, I can remember Rodney Marsh, who is a Martian probably, but Rodney Marsh just, taking the way some of these better world-class players would take it would be skill then, total skill versus not that taking a penalty is not, but that would just be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I've been begging for them to add that to the MLS All-Star Week.
Yeah.
The challenge, like bring that back. Because when MLS first came to be, they had that as your PKs.
Yeah.
Right?
I think
so. Yeah, I participated in that at UCF when the Atlanta team, and I'm trying to think, my mind just went blank on that team. EV, help me out here. Atlanta Chiefs, thank you. They a bunch of teams that came down, and we played them, and it was a tie score, and we went into that. But exciting, like you said, Bill. It would certainly be very interesting.
So much skill and the speed, and the whole thing was just so exciting to watch. But anyway.
So.
But hold on. He saved a penalty against Pele.
Yeah, and I was honest about it. He didn't take a very good kick, but no. Doesn't go in the notes. There's no
that's not what it says in the Philadelphia Inquirer article. It says you knocked him on his ass. Is what the title of the article is.
Exactly.
I did. When I told you, I went out and just knocked him over.
That's the key. Is like the article doesn't say, "Oh, it was a weak penalty that I saved." It says,
there's no way he's going to get by me because I just couldn't. And don't ask me why, but I just he's just not going to dink me here and make a fool out of me. So I probably could have been a linebacker. I probably did a pretty good job of taking him down. I mean, there was no attempt to be finesse there. It was I'm knocking you down and we're just going to take our chances from 12 yards out,
And then you saved it.
Yep.
And then that would be on my tombstone.
Yeah, I would want people to know.
At the very bottom, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I saved the penalty against Pele.
Well, I think and I'm not the sad part. I mean, we're pretty much out of our generation. Even when we go to a soccer coaches show, look at it's a younger crowd, and that generation is Messi, Ronaldo, Lewandowski, and all those fun things. And that's understandable, And we didn't get the publicity and all the stuff that, and I was just glad to see that they gave Pele his due as far as international and here in the States, but. Yeah, I mean, he definitely opened up everybody's eyes as far as what soccer was here in the States. And the crowds at the Cosmo games were just insane.
Yeah. What I'd like to do now, EV, and we'll come back to Bill, but John Bowe, I know, has some things he wants to say about this. And in case you listeners and viewers out there don't know this, and I hope John talks a little bit about it. He worked for Pele. For a few years, designing their shoes, which were great. And
there you go.
And so,
John.
Wow. So I'm going to turn it over to John. I know he wants to say some things, and then John will swing it back to me, and we'll continue with Bill. So
can we just listen to more Nuttall stories?
We can.
Fucking Pele, man. And the Miami thing, I did not know. And Pat Johnston played Miami for the Sharks. John Boa sat on the bench in Miami for the Miami Freedom.
Freedom. Oh my God.
Yep. And then Tony DeFilippis, my guy, EV, you trained Tony one weekend.
Yeah.
He played there after me. That's funny.
A lot of Miami stuff in Fort Lauderdale, and wow.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of Pele's when I played in the APSL, let me tell you.
Well, and the you know what Bill was just talking about is, you know, the very premise of this whole podcast. It was, you know, Bone and I thought about, you know, this podcast should be based on a typical at the bar conversation when we see each other at the convention every year, right? Because everybody tells the same stories and everything, you know, and as you said, Bill, you know, the younger generation probably, and I'm not banging on them, but they probably have no idea of, you know, the sort of the guys that came before them, and, you know, who, you know, were great players in their own right, you know. And so this is kind of, you know, this whole premise of this podcast, which, geez, I think we're up to maybe 68 followers now. We're kicking ass.
All right, now we're
you know, yeah, you know, is based on, you know, these stories. So sorry, Bose, I didn't want to.
But it's perfect because the small college thing, I don't think people realize that, because I was done in '90, so that's kind of when it began to, right? It's all foreign kids, Division II now, right?
Yeah.
So
the whole landscape changed. The South, I mean, ACC brought in soccer, and you know, you got, you know, this guy John Rennie's up in Columbia. He comes down to Duke, and it's like, you know, what's he doing with Duke? He's, you know, I mean, and it's, as Paul Harvey says, now you know the rest of the story. But I mean, you know, it's just like, why is this guy going to Duke? They're not going to play. I mean, it's the ACC. They don't even know. They don't know if it's stuffed or round or what, you know. And then, you know, Ibrahim came along and all that good stuff. But it's good stuff.
Magical time. So I made a little. Did some. I didn't do as much research on Bill Nuttall as Ryan did, but I did do research on this Pele guy, and I just had a few thoughts about him. You know, especially where I grew up. You know, in the 70s, there's nothing except for the World Cup. Maybe I think they showed the final in 1986. I don't think they showed anything else, right?
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know when it happened, but it's probably because of social media nonsense. But everybody's always talking about, you know, who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? You know, and I never argue with those things because there's so many variables about decades and nutrition and weights. And, you know, I probably couldn't have gotten out of the way of Bill Nuttall, and a bit like Pele didn't either. But, you know, I just never had those arguments. But I do love football so much. I live it every day. I talk about it every day. I have dreams about it. You know, the reason, even though I have been a goalkeeper for 45 years, it's got to be Pele. I think my parents gave me his book. You guys, everybody had it. It was a really thick paperback. It just had Pele, My Life in the Beautiful Game, when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And that was right before he came to NASL. And what people forget is he was the highest paid team athlete in the world. When he signed for the Cosmos, $7 million for 3 seasons. That's righteous bucks now. So Clive Toy told him that if he went to Europe, he could win more trophies, but if he came here, he could win over a nation. I always like that quote. But we can debate the success and failure of the NASL. We can, you know, you cannot meet anyone from Arkansas to Seattle to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that does not know the name Pele. And I think that speaks volumes for this guy. And until we had the privilege of watching Michael Jordan play, he and Muhammad Ali were the most recognizable athletes on the planet. And most of his fame came from people listening on the radio, even if it's just for a few times every 4 years. So think about, you know, where we are in this tech age, information age, and you really, you know, you're calling around the radio. Even in Brazil, where less than half the people had televisions in the 60s. So I think I read somewhere that we have video of less than a third of his 1,250 goals. And you think about Messi and Ronaldo, you know, they go to practice and everything's on tape. But he was made to be a player, and you guys know this much better than I do. We've all met him a few times. Short in stature, but a really thick guy. He wore a size 4.5 shoe. Mike Taylor told me they did some research about the perfect size foot to hit a football. And I think it's a 4 or 4.5, and he had that.
Wow.
His balance and change of pace was absolutely incredible, and he was very, very tough. His vision and thought process was miles ahead of everyone, and it really showed the way into the future of the number 10 position. So if you look up the videos of him getting whacked all over the field, I mean, getting kicked. People forget that there were no yellow and red cards until 1970. And in 1966 in England, it was either Italy or Argentina just kicked him out of the tournament. His knee was like the size.
Yep.
So, you take that anomaly away, he could have won 4 in a row. But we talk a lot on this show about being a pro, something we still fail at in this country. Scoring goals, something you have to do to win games. He did both of those things with perfection and regularity, with an absolute penchant for the outrageous. And this is one thing that just really resonated with me. Ironically, 3 of his most watched, most famous clips were on his misses. So the dummy around the Yugoslav goalkeeper, and then he missed far post. Goalkeeper's flying out, he doesn't even touch it and goes around him. The half-field bomb that he missed by a couple of inches, and then, of course, the Gordon Banks save. I mean, I'm pretty sure we don't watch a lot of Hank Aaron striking out. But those 3 things really stood out for me. The guy scored 1,200 goals, and everyone knows about those 3 misses. He was just a genius. My coach growing up was from New Jersey and then worked for the government, came down to Mississippi, home of the Alford brothers, Bill, that worked for you.
Wow.
Yep. We played together.
Wow.
He said he remembered seeing Santos in an exhibition game when Pele was like 20, 21 or something, and that these idiots in front of him were like, I don't see what the big deal. Nobody's even marking him. It was a great story. It's like, pretty amazing stupidity. But nobody can hang with him. So no matter what the colors are on your office wall or what zip code you were born in, what country, there are certain axioms of global football that just give us chills, right? They transcend subjectivity. The stripes of the Juventus and Celtic kit, the Munich clock that stopped at the same time the plane crashed at Old Trafford, or You'll Never Walk Alone at Anfield, the Super Clásicos in Argentina and Spain. But the specialness and magnetism of that number 10, I think you could really trace that back to Pele. We're not going to argue about where he ranks in the top of all time, but it certainly isn't fucking 10th. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I really encourage anyone to go hit YouTube hard when you're done Googling Bill Nuttall, revisit a plethora of video about him. Edson Arantes do Nascimento might be gone, but Pele is immortal.
Make sure you Google me first. Well done. because the Pele thing will be about 100 pages minimum of stuff. Where do you begin with that guy, right?
All right, a little trivia here, gentlemen.
Go.
Anyone know the bidding war between the story of Adidas and Puma for him?
You mean how he wasn't allowed to wear the 3 stripes on his jersey where he had to tape over it, or what's the...
No, that's
Cruyff. That was Cruyff, yeah.
That's Cruyff. Go back to school.
Pele had the same thing.
All right. So the brothers at the time had a Pele pact that they would not bid for him because it was just going to go up and up. And then, and John Bowe, you'll like this, and Ryan, you need to find it. There's a clip on YouTube, 1970, before they play Peru. All right. Puma secretly pays him $120,000. He walks out before the game and tells ref, hey, I got to tie my shoe. So he kneels and starts tying his shoe. They paid Puma paid the cameraman to zero in. And you see, that's when he became the Puma athlete.
Pretty amazing.
So $120,000 today is worth $1 million, they say, for doing that. And that's the story of the bidding war between Pele.
And he wore ponies like Canaglia also.
That's right.
That's right. Wore the pony for yeah.
Oh, a little more trivia. I like that.
Yeah, they were like modified turf baseball shoes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were custom made with real leather, and they had that multi-stud Beckenbauer bottom on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like back to to Pele, obviously with Puma, little shout out there. That's why I'm doing that today, Ryan. And since he did the King, I'm wearing a velvet polo. Okay.
boy.
Sweet.
Little tie that in together, Ryan. You know, with the theme of the king, the velvet. So
Funky
good shoe,
fresh.
and you know, EV. You know that shoe's still around, which is pretty interesting after all these years.
Oh yeah. Well, when
Yes.
I first started playing soccer in high school, nobody had soccer shoes. So I went down to Louisa's Sports Shop, which was the small town sports shop that in Exeter, and I had them order me a pair of, I said I didn't know what I was buying because I just started playing. So I was like, I need soccer shoes. And they were like, well, you know, we got this company Puma who can probably ship them to us there in Boston. You know, I was like, I don't care. I need 11 and a half. Just get them for me. Right. And sure enough, pair of Puma Pele Kings, yellow stripe,
Oh,
you know,
Sweet.
all leather, of course, which, you know, we didn't, you know, I didn't know if that was important at the time. And, you know, but my first pair of soccer shoes was Puma Pelés, you know, with the yellow stripe, just like in the 1970 World Cup, you know, in that poster that he's standing there before the final.
That's cool.
And yeah, and you know, and like you say, Bone, to this day, they still got Puma Kings, you know.
yeah.
You know, I was thinking when Bill was telling the story about laying out Pele, you know, back in the small. There you go, right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
You can just tell how soft they are, and you can smell them.
That's right, man. That's right. You can still put your hand over your heart. Louisa Sports Shop. The Mandigani brothers ran it. It was great.
Wow.
And but you know, when I first started playing soccer, this was back in New Hampshire, so nobody knew what was going on. We used the referee. Bill was talking about laying out Pele. That was back in the good old days when basically if somebody came into the area and you knocked them down, it was like, okay. I mean, he was looking at the ball, so I guess it's okay, right? And I tell this story all the time. That was back in the two-man system of referees when they wore the stripes and in the bike, you know, the bike athletic shorts and all that stuff. And I had referees run by me and go, "Hey, good hit." So yeah, the game's come a long way since then, and goalkeeping has gotten much more difficult. But yeah, man, those Pele Kings right there was what we got.
I don't know, EV. We could have used a little of that old school goalkeeping against Holland, as we talked about last week.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. So, but I don't know. Though, like Bill said, nowadays, you know, if you look at the striker wrong, they pull the red card on you, and you're out of the game and all that. But sorry, a little side note, Bone. Sorry, I got carried away.
All right, good segue back into to Bill. So Miami sort of closes shop, and they move up to Fort Lauderdale. So you get to play with Fort Lauderdale strikers, and you mentioned Van Taylor was your teammate there. Share us what happens, and I'm going to let you tell the story of this next famous player, but you get to play with another famous player here.
Got to practice with one. But anyway, just to you had asked me about how it was with Elizabeth Robbie running. So we were owned by a Cuban businessman, the Miami Toros. We were owned by a Cuban businessman my first year, and halfway into our second year, we're in the Orange Bowl and ready to play a Friday night game or Thursday training. And they come in the locker room and said, hey, listen, guys, we're going to have new ownership because the previous owner never paid any of your Social Security, none of your withholding tax that you did, blah, blah, blah. And we have a new owner, and her name is Elizabeth Robbie. And so, because like as Greg said, the time an NFL owner could not own another sports team, professional sports team. So Elizabeth Robbie was the owner, in air quotes. And so at the end of 1976, we did not have a good year. Van and I were splitting duties. And they decided that they would move up to a stadium called Lockhart Stadium in Fort Lauderdale. And that's where they changed the name to the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. So I was called in. Ron Newman's the coach. Greg Myers left the Toros as the coach and became the coach at the Naval Academy. And so Ron Newman was a coach in Fort Lauderdale. And we're training probably a week or so, and it's Van and myself. And I'm the coach at FIU at the time, by the way. So I'm doing both duties. I'm coaching at FIU and I'm playing.
Oh, wow.
And I got my master's degree at FIU at the same time. But so Ron Newman calls me and he says, "We're going to let you go." Okay, I get it. I kind of figured it. I said, out of curiosity, who are you bringing in? He said, "I'm bringing a guy in from England." I said, "Well, who would that be?" And he said, "It's Gordon Banks." And I said, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." And I also realized that Gordon Banks had one eye at the time. He lost his eye in a car accident, I believe.
Yeah.
And I said to Newman, "I'm not going to cause any problems. I'm not looking to get back in the squad. I'm not looking for brownie points here. Can I just hang out and train with the keepers? Because I just want to see what this guy is all about." And I have never been more in awe of an individual. And we're all keepers here. Just try to play with one eye for 1 minute and work on your angles and crosses and all those things that happen in a game. And he did it with one eye, and I never saw the guy out of position. I never saw him strain because he, did something to put him in a bad spot. The guy is amazing. The guy is amazing.
Incredible.
And a great guy, an absolutely spot on guy.
Right. Wow.
Bill, what was his work ethic like?
Totally. He was totally immersed. I mean, he was no shortcuts. There was none of this, I'm a world-class guy. I don't need to do this stuff.
Did you guys train each other, or did you have a little bit of a goalkeeper specialist back then?
No, I kind of trained each other. So we just took turns shooting it on each other. And then as soon as the shooting drills came, or they started doing some situational stuff. But there was no keeper coach.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Bill, you mentioned at this time you were also coaching FIU. Walk into that a little bit, like how you get the job, because, as you mentioned, you're doing both at the same time. And by the way, you're there for 5 years, which I thought was a long time. And Evie, this is pretty incredible. He goes 56 wins, 18 losses, and only one tie. Coach of the year in 2 years. And there's going to be a great story here that I think everyone's going to be surprised about coming up here. But going to that little phase of your life, how you're balancing that, and then, you get into being an assistant coach with the Strikers, you get to do some of the radio and TV color commentary. So, sort of share with us how these all things, come together here.
Yeah, I sometimes am one blessed guy. I tell you right now, so the Miami Toros are just starting up in the old NASL, and I am in Delaware with the soccer swings with the Delaware Wings. And the Philadelphia Atoms just announced that they're going to have a franchise, and they are going to Al Miller is going to be the coach. And so I said, "Oh, okay." I'm saying to myself, "All right, I'm going to have a shot here. I'm at least going to get a tryout or whatever." And they brought in Bob Rigby, if you guys know Bob Rigby,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
a spot on great goalkeeper and all that. And Greg Myers is the coach of FIU, and he was my coach at Davis and Elkins.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to the coach of the Toros, "Hey, I got a keeper for you. I know you need Americans because you had to have 2 Americans on the field at all times in the old NASL rules." So they brought me down. I made the team, and Myers makes me his grad assistant. And of course the seasons were good because when fall came around, the NASL was done. So we played in the summer and, in April, and they trained at FIU. So I was doing my grad work and training, and was the assistant coach. And then Greg Myers takes over the coach of the Toros, and I'm made the head coach. So that's why then I'm released from the Strikers, and I'm just just doing my thing at FIU. And one day they asked me to do the radio and the television for the Strikers, which I did for 2 years. And then I was the assistant coach, because one day Tim Robbie, who was the general manager and the owners, and at the time now that you could own as many franchises as you wanted. That thing was gone. So we were. He comes down. He says, "We need an assistant coach who understands the American market. You've been doing the radio and TV, blah blah blah. So you consider it?" And I said, "Sure," and I did. So I jumped right in and became the assistant coach.
Yeah. All right. This is a good segue, people, just so you guys know. Ryan, I don't know if you know this. We have the first soccer commentator on ESPN.
First ever soccer game on ESPN.
Wow.
How about that?
And
and some would say the last.
yeah, there you go. Boom. Oh,
Oh, man. Oh.
Bada bing. So, this you talk about sometimes, so I am coaching at FIU, and I'm doing the radio and TV for the Strikers. And I keep hearing about this all sports network. They're calling it ESPN, is going to do like CNN 24/7 sports. Okay, whatever. That's never going to happen. We know that it's not an op. And they're up in Bristol, Connecticut. And I am on a recruiting trip. And I said, you know what? I sent my resume I called this gal. They had a number. I called this gal who was Scotty Connell, who was a big time executive, was the guy who put ESPN together, and she says, yeah, send me your resume, send me a tape, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I sent a resume, heard nothing, crickets. So I said, I'm going to go up there. I was like an hour away. I was in the city, and then I pull up, and it's a trailer, freaking single wide trailer in Bristol, Connecticut. So already you're in Bristol, Connecticut, which is the middle of nowhere. Okay, Bristol's a nice town, but it isn't exactly the media capital of the world, right? I go in, and there's a secretary, there's a gal here at the desk, and there's another guy to my left who's sitting in a big chair with a bunch of fishing rods and stuff like that. And I said to her, hey, I sent my resume in, blah, blah, blah. I really, is any chance you guys, I understand you're going to be doing games. And at the time, they only had the Big Ten contract to do all of their championship games, all the championships of any Big Ten event, which meant they had to do the Big Ten soccer championships, or quote unquote, right?
Right.
So this guy, well, you can talk to Scotty Connell, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? I said, did you ever? Oh, I can't find your resume. I don't know. Can you? What did you do? What do you got? And I said, I gave my resume. So you have done some TV? Yeah, I done it for the Strikers. I'm in Channel 10. Blah blah blah. Okay. Let me keep my eye on it. I go home, thinking, this is crazy. Probably a week later, I get a call from his secretary saying, we want you to do a game up in Bloomington, Indiana versus Minnesota soccer, Big Ten soccer championships. And I said, okay, what's the deal? Yeah, just buy your ticket. When you get up there, we'll have a hotel for you. I said, so I have to buy my own ticket to come up there, right? I just witnessed you guys operating out of a trailer in Bristol. I'm a soccer coach. I'm not making that kind of money where I can just blow $500-600. Maybe I'll get reimbursed, right? So I spoke to my wife, and she says, go ahead, give it a try. So I did. I went up there, did the game. It was like 6-0 at halftime, because Indiana was like the number one team in the country, and Minnesota's a club. It was a
Right.
complete freaking joke, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what they do, they put it in a can. It was actually in a can, in a film can. Take it to the airport, fly it to Hartford, take it over to Bristol, and then at some point they would, they would air the game. And this guy was doing the 6 and the 11 sports in Hartford, Lou Palmer, and that's it. So he and I did a bunch of games, and then ABC Wide World of Sports was going to do an NASL game. And that was a big deal. You know, when you remember that Saturdays, it used to come on, the thrill of victory, and this was going to, and the NASL was going to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So meanwhile, Scotty Connell at ESPN, by the way, became the freaking CEO of ESPN. And, you know, he was a big time guy. Anyway, so I go to New York, and the guy by the name of John Wildhack, who was running this, and he says, well, we're going to do a dummy telecast in Philadelphia, and we're going to have 3 different booths set up, and I'm going to be one of the 3, and we're going to do a dummy telecast. And so we did that, and didn't hear anything. So he calls me about 2 weeks later, and he says, I've got a proposition for you. I said, okay. He says, we're thinking of putting an announcer on the sidelines so that during the game, you maybe could talk to a player or coach, or you'll be right there where the action is. How comfortable are you doing that? I said, well, I know most of the people. I'm very comfortable. I can do that. And they said, okay, because we're not sure. It could get a little dicey down there on the sidelines with, an on-sideline reporter. I just want to know. I said, okay, yeah. So I don't hear anything. And finally, I call back, and he says, well, we decided to go with Vern Lundquist on the sideline. I said, well, he was doing the Dallas Tornado games, and he was doing the 6 and the 11 before, obviously, But can you believe it? That was the first time they put a person on the sidelines. They always tested it with soccer, right? Can you believe that, having that discussion? So I had that. We're thinking, we're not sure, because it could get a little dicey down there on the sidelines. And now they got more freaking announcers on the sidelines.
Oh yeah.
That some of them should be run over by a wide receiver or something at some point. But
what a story!
Yeah,
How about that, Ev?
Yeah.
And a crazy story or what?
And the other thing too is what you have to remember, fellas, is for this guy to ask, to kind of warn Bill, hey, things should get a little dicey down the sidelines. First of all, Bill knows most everybody in soccer. It wasn't like it was a giant, sport back then. Yeah. But maybe more importantly is, back in those days, Bill was a physical giant. Right. There were not, soccer was played by small guys, and so, this guy thinking that somebody's going to get in Bill's face is like, that's not going to happen.
Well, you know how it is. I mean, the sidelines get a little dicey down there, but the fact that they were so nervous about putting somebody on the sidelines that, that whole mentality that we don't even, that now it's like, there's 100 of them on the sidelines. And so, I was pretty fortunate to get involved with all that stuff. And then I go to Miter Sports. Now I go to Dallas as the general manager of the Dallas Sidekicks. We brought Tattoo over. Right. Yeah. And then had a falling out.
Hey, Bill, let me ask about the Dallas days there, because if you remember, maybe you don't, the Dallas team, the indoor team, Bill was in charge of, their player personnel.
Yep.
And we played them on Team USA in Toledo.
Yep. The AISA barnstorming.
Oh my God!
Tour. Yeah.
Wow. That's that. You're talking about some. That's. I did a lot of scouting there because we were putting a team together at the time.
Right. A lot of the teams were right. Yeah.
And so we were the new team into the league, and so we had a 1 year head start looking at players and stuff. So I was the first employee hired, and then I was doing NASL indoor games because the Strikers did not play indoor, but Tampa, Montreal, and all those. I'm doing the game, so I had a head start. I saw everybody play indoor, and the tattoo guy was lighting it up.
Right.
I mean, he was lighting up for Tampa when he was with Tampa, and
Yeah.
so when I went to Dallas, I said, it's funny. The owner was Don Carter, who also owned the Dallas Mavericks.
That's right.
Once again, a joint ownership.
Yeah.
And that had a lot of benefits because, and the president of the Mavericks was Norm Sanju, who I probably learned the most I've ever learned about how to be involved in the sports world. Anyway, but the owner was very religious, Don Carter. And so, you couldn't put a drink on your expense report. You really had to kind of, toe the straight line and play the game. Well, I said to Norm Sanju, the president of the Mavericks, I've got a player who is big time. This guy will light it up. We got to sign him. Tampa is folding. I've already talked to Rodney Marsh. We got a deal done. But obviously we can't move until you and Mr. Carter. I said, but he does take his shirt off and throw it in the stands.
That's right.
And Norm Sanju says, I'm okay with that, but I don't know whether Mr. C will be okay with that, Mr. Carter. And so he ran it by Carter, and he and then he finally said, yeah, okay, we can do it. So we had the Adidas contract. We went through 45 jerseys. They got Tattoo is ripping it up. Well, how many jerseys do you make? Should you make, how many away jerseys should you make? How many home jerseys? We don't know.
Yeah.
He might light the league up, or he might have a stinker. And and you look, and of course, we're blowing through jerseys, and that became a really big deal. And anyway,
yeah, he was fun to watch.
He scored goals.
Oh, he could score. I mean,
He could score goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be the theme of the show the last couple
He
weeks.
could
Can you
score
talk about
goals.
some people who can score some goals?
well, he was built for indoor. He was perfect
yeah.
for indoor.
Yeah.
He had, he was a short guy. He has and he just had a real nose. So, it was natural. And we got lucky because Tampa was folding, the NASL was folding.
Yeah.
And I had the inside track because I knew Tattoo could play. I'd seen him play a lot of games. Not that anybody else hadn't, but we were first. I was ready to dive in early with Rodney, and Rodney was okay with it. So,
yeah. So how does that take you, Dallas? How does that take you from getting out of the professional ranks per se and into miter?
So I had a run-in with with one of the owner's right-hand men, not inside the Maverick organization, but outside, and they fired me. So I ended up going to Miter Sports in Nashville, Tennessee, and they were a company called Genesco, had the rights for Miter in the States. So they brought me in to do the promotions. They never had anybody who really knew the players or how things worked and approaching college teams and the promotional side. They never really knew, and how to. Anyway, so that's what I did. I was there for 6 years, and I'm sitting in my office one day, and a guy by the name of Hank Steinbrecher calls me, and this is 1990. It was August of 90, and he says, no, it wasn't. It was July 4th because so it was probably May. Sorry. And he says, I need a general manager for the U.S. World Cup team for 1994. And I said, so what does that mean? What do you, because here we are. So let's back up. 1990. The United States sends a college all-star team to the Italian World Cup.
Right.
That's
College
right.
all-star team. Right? And like most college all-star teams playing in that world, they got their butts kicked.
Dude.
And I've always said, and whenever I'm interviewed about the pioneers of soccer, they got their butts kicked in Italy, and 6 or 7 guys, Harks, Ramos, Vermes, Caligiuri,
Viola.
and I think I'm missing maybe one other. They left Italy and just started trying out for teams. And the American player wasn't looked at like, oh yeah, come on in. Oh man, I can't believe you're here. You're an American player. You just came from Italy. Yeah, you can play on the pub team just down the street.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you have a lot of nerve coming here to talk to me, a pro coach, about whether you can have a tryout or not. And they stuck it out. Ramos stayed in Spain.
John Harks, right?
Yeah, John. So
he went up at Derby
goal
County.
Goal of the season. John Harks scored goal of the season against Peter Shilton.
Yeah. So here they are. So Harksey's, he's working it to get more and more credibility. And they're the real pioneers. It isn't like now, like, oh yeah, you got an American kid, we'll take a good look at him. No problem. Bring him over.
Right.
It wasn't that at all. And, so you're a role player at best as an American player. So you're not wanting to be making any waves, and, give all the credit to those guys for sticking it out, fighting it out, and getting some credibility. So the next wave, there was a major green light after that. So
we had Ronaldo went from playing for San Francisco in the APSL right in '90 to being at Saarbrücken in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, but he was the second wave. Ronaldo,
he wasn't with the 90 group. He was
right. So the second wave of guys, like the Ronaldos, we had Ronaldos, and John Doyle went to. So the German. The Berlin Wall went down, so the East Germans were now in the Bundesliga.
Right.
And so Dresden wanted John Doyle, big John Doyle. And so he went to Dresden on loan. So, yeah, I mean, those guys were the second wave. So they were definitely were looked at, with a whole different world. And Harksey probably gave us the most credibility because he played in the FA Cup and he played in the first division, I think it was called at the time.
Yeah.
I think his last year in England, he was in the EPL, and and the EPL hadn't really come into full. So these guys are on start bonuses, point bonuses, and all that. And if you didn't play in England, Monday you played on the reserve side, and you got $50 for that. I mean, it was not there were these. So these guys were the true pioneers. I always keep bringing that up. Because when people are talking now, because the American guys are so much more respected, obviously. But I said, forget it. Who's the guys that paved the way to get that thing going? So anyway, Hank calls me and says, we're going to have a standing national team. I've got a coach who is good, but he's a little quirky. But I know you've had experience with some coaches, foreign coaches, which I did at Dutch and German and all that kind of stuff. And he said, I want you to be the general manager, and I need someone who has no baggage inside of U.S. soccer. Because without going into all the Warner Fricker was the president of U.S. Soccer, and he was instrumental in getting the World Cup. But the World Cup also knew that Warner Fricker was not the guy to take them the next 3-4 years and prepare the country for the World Cup. So bottom line is Warner. So Alan Rothenberg's president, Hank Steinbrecher becomes CEO, executive director. They want a full-time general manager. They've got a full-time coach, and we've got 7 guys in Europe, and the rest of them are college all-stars at best. And so the plan was to get them enough games and to train full-time. And but we didn't have any money. So, how do you play? How do you train? What do you pay the guys? Where do you play? How can you afford to travel? And how do you get all this organized? And we did not have to qualify because we were just like we're going to do in 26. You don't have to qualify because we were already in. So I accepted the job, and my job was to find games, figure out what we were going to pay the players, try to put a budget together that none of us know. We're flying the airplane, and we're trying to figure out how to build it in midair, right? No, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, so the answer is we have to. And Rothenberg wanted to make sure that we weren't using Federation dollars for the team, because that would allow the board of directors to stick their nose in our business. And Alan and Hank were 1,000% focused on get this team ready without any outside interference. We need to make this team competitive. We got to have at least a decent showing on this whole thing. And so what I had to do was find a game, whether it's domestically or internationally. And if it's internationally, I have to find if I can get an appearance fee plus all expenses. And when we're in the U.S., I have to figure out how to pay teams to come over and play and still make money. And now I've got a coach who wants a game every 10 days because he can't have them training out in Mission Viejo for months on end. That doesn't do any good. He might as well go back to college. So he wants an international match in the perfect world, 10 days. So we've got a technical issue, keeping the coach busy with games. And we got a financial issue as I got to figure out how to keep that going. So I just started putting games together, sending out telexes. We were in the telex mode. Now, remember, you can only play Brazil once, Germany once, Italy once. You get the big 5 or 6 one time. That's 6 games. I still need another 20. Now what do I do? So, you're digging up all kinds of games. The Colombians would come up, and we get them up pretty cheaply, and you get Peru and a few of the island teams, but none of those are making any money. We would go to Spain and play in Spain. So there's the other thing. You have the World Cup dates, and then you have teams in Europe around the world where they have an open date. They're not playing. They're not. So I would try to plug in. If I knew Ireland was going to be on Wednesday, March 10th, I said, hey, can we play? Can we come over? And then they say yes. I say, fine. We need $100,000 plus all expenses, blah, blah, blah. And then I try and get a Saturday game with whoever else has an open date because we're in Europe and try and make enough money to do that. And so, and also that gave Bora a chance to look at his European players because so we would get enough money to keep that going. I can't tell you, we went to Saudi Arabia 3 times. 3 times. JFK to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia with the team to get $250,000 in cash so that I could make the next couple of months payroll and expense. Well,
back up a little, Bill. Back up a little bit, because what was your first meeting? Go into who the coach was and your first meeting with him, and maybe things he wanted from you, and you were, like, I don't know how we're going to get that. Maybe go into some stories about like how that quote built the foundation.
Bora is I'll tell you, I would have loved to have seen Bora coach this team that went. There's a young team, because think about the U.S. team. We had less experience, much less experience in the team that went to, the team that went to Qatar. I mean, all those guys are young, but they're playing in top leagues in the world. So there is, there was some experience there. We didn't have any of that. So Bora, when I first met Bora, Bora's an interesting guy. He always has the answer before he asks the question. He's a very thorough guy. And he kept me at arm's length for probably 3 weeks because I think he thought I was going to come in and try and run the show. And I kept telling him, Bora, I'm just here to give you whatever I can do. I'm going to do my very best to fight for whatever you think you need. We have a limited budget. Hank and Alan are on your side. and we're going to do what we can do. And I'm here to do what I can do to help you. And so once he realized that I wasn't about to try to tell him how to run the business, how to run his team, stick my nose in all that kind of stuff, then we became the best of friends. He is just once you're in with Bora's group, loyalty wise, he's absolutely on board. So yeah, when I would have to go to Bora and say, Bora, we got to go back to Saudi Arabia. Puta madre, we have to go back. I'm like, yeah, we are out of money. And he was good because he knew I would never do that unless we had to do it. And so, and then we got lucky. We put together the U.S. Cup, which was 2 different summers there where we played Italy and Germany and all those teams and made millions of dollars. And that got me over the edge. That took care of me for months at a time. And then I didn't have to worry about which opponent we were playing. I needed to give them a game, an international game. Then the Russian states broke up. If you recall, at the same time, all the Soviet Union broke up. So every one of those countries, Ukraine, Romania, Georgia, Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, all those teams wanted to come to the U.S. and play because they were a free country and they were really proud of the fact that they could come to the United States and play. That was a big, big deal. So I got myself a lot of games that way. Didn't make a lot of money. The Moldova games didn't really draw very well. We played in Jacksonville in a minor league baseball stadium, and and we ended up playing up in North Carolina. But this was after the Russian states had just broken up, and the Moldova guys, we played at Davidson on the Davidson field. The Moldova players are going into a grocery store at 3:00 in the morning and calling back home saying, I'm sitting in the middle of a grocery store at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I can buy anything I want. There is, you're sitting there going, that because why? They were in a food line for bread on Tuesday, milk on Wednesday. You know what I mean? And these guys like, you can't believe this. There's food everywhere. 3:00 in the morning, I just walked into the store and bought what I wanted to buy. It was, so, we're laughing at the same token. It's like, wow, you're right.
Yeah. And
granted, we had all of our meals were a buffet for our players. And then, we had a divider, and in the other room was the other team. They had the same meals as we did. Well, you can just imagine the Moldovans and the Romanians. They're like freaking packing the stuff in bags. And my director of events, he's going, what the hell? These guys are eating us out of house and home. Remember where they came from. They're unbelievable.
Were you nervous or scared? When the first U.S. Cup you put together. I mean, those were some very well attended games, as you alluded to, and I was just wondering, was it hard for those teams to come over at that time because it's the U.S. or how did you persuade them to come over?
Well, we're hosting the World Cup in '94, so every team that thought that they were going to make the World Cup, and some of them were still qualifying, wanted to play in the U.S. They wanted to see what it was all about. They wanted to check out the stadiums. They wanted to have a feel for what it was all about here. So they all wanted to come. We had them queuing up for that. Everybody wanted to come and play. And the Germans are so organized. They want to know where they're playing, how they're playing, how, it all, it's just, they're just, and now the U.S. Cup is in June, right? It was in June. And the Germans are over in December before June. And we're having lunch with them in Chicago with their delegation, which is he's like a traveling secretary guy. And he's sitting there and he's going through the agenda for June. We will train at 10 o'clock on June 1st. We will have lunch at 12 noon. We will train again at 3:30. I said, excuse me, does the coach have any input in this? Oh, they will train. They will train. And then we play Brazil because if after all the big riots in L.A., if you recall the huge riots they had, we had a Freedom Cup and Brazil agreed to come up and play us, and we would give the proceeds to help. I can't remember what the name of the charity was to help rebuild L.A. Right. So I'm up with the Brazilians suite. They can't find half their players. Well, I think he was on this flight, but I'm not sure where he's coming from. And they're like so disorganized. Of course they beat our ass anyway, but I mean, they are like, and then the Germans were like, no, they will, but they're so that those guys, they wanted to come, everybody wanted to come to the US, but that thought that they were absolutely going to be in the World Cup. And then the big guys all wanted to make sure. And a lot of them, like, Germany, not politic, but the Italians knew they were going to be in New York. Germans knew they were going to be in Chicago. We knew we were going to be in LA. I can't remember. They put the Dutch in Orlando, and
yeah, they did.
I can't. But anyway, so that was so. So the Germans are coming over, and they say, of course, we want to play in Chicago. Why? Because they want to survey all of Chicago, find a training site. The Italians wanted to play us in New York. We ended up playing them in New Haven, but and they wanted to check out training sites in the New York area. So those guys were all, and FIFA 100%. Tab Ramos was not paid by Real Betis for 3 months. So he comes over. Now, granted, when we get a European guy to come play in the U.S. for 2 games, he flies coach. These guys are flying coach. They spend 2 or 3 days here, fly coach back, and then they play in their normal league games. So they are absolutely, torn up one side and down the other. And God bless them for doing that. So Bora was sensitive, and I would always call the guys, like a guy like Harks, who was just in the team, starting to make some money. I always said, okay, John, what's happening? He says, well, I'm in the team. I don't know if I always say, what's the temperature? No, don't call me up for that game. Really, if you don't, in the States, it says, don't call me up for that game. I'm getting my start bonuses, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, let me get back. Yeah, I'll talk with Bora about it. And Bora was good. I'd say, Bora, Harksy really doesn't want to come in for this game because he's finally making some money and he's back in the starting team and blah, blah, blah. And Bora sometimes would say, yeah, I get it. Okay. And other times, no, he must come in. Okay, John, we're going to make the request because you had to put a request in to get a player. And this is all the backroom stuff that they don't have to deal with anymore.
Yeah.
So when we would get, so if we're going to get Harksy, Ramos, so anyway, Ramos hasn't been paid for 2 months. I sent a telex to FIFA saying that Ramos hasn't been paid by Real Betis. I think it was less than 72 hours. Ramos had all his money. FIFA just boom, nailed him. And this is so. We really had a lot of support from FIFA. But when we want to release, so when you want to get a player released, I had to send a telex to the club secretary, who was a general manager, but saying we want John Harks for a game against whatever Germany on whatever date, and they have to release him because you can get him released 6 times at the time because we were not qualifying, so I couldn't pull the qualification card by saying, hey, you've been we're qualifying. So and then they would come back and say, okay, he's released, and then I had to cover his career-ending disability policy for the time that he was away. Now, most of our guys aren't worth much, but at the time our guys weren't worth much, but they're worth $300,000-$400,000, and what is it meaning? What do we have to pay the club? And I don't know how the Olympic team does it when they bring a LeBron James on the Olympic team. LeBron James gets a career-ending injury on the Olympic team. Who the hell pays that disability policy?
Yeah.
I mean,
Big policy.
or Maradona or somebody, Our guys are small potatoes, but we had to cover that. So I had to cover the policy for those 4 days, and we sent them the money for that. And then we ended up getting our own policy, blah blah blah. But that was some of the stuff that went into the whole mix of things. And then when you talk about politics, when Havilange was running for president again, he asked Hayatu of the African Confederation. Hayatu was the highest ranking guy, the president, just like Jack Warner was president of CONCACAF. He said, "What's it going to take to get your votes?" This is, I mean, a lot of it is horse trading, like you do in Congress.
Yeah.
The legitimate part is horse trading, right? And Hayatu says we need the clubs that our players are playing for to cover the insurance policy while they're on national team duty. George Weah could never be released to play for Liberia because they couldn't afford the insurance policies. So Hayatu asked for a legitimate request, not $10,000, $10 million a vote.
Right.
He had a legitimate request. Get this insurance stuff off my back so I can have my kids can come play for their nations. A legitimate request and a legitimate horse trading, right? So that saved me about $200,000 because of the umbrella policy that I had to have when I had guys coming in and all that kind of stuff. And then, we had Frankie Klopas was playing for Olympiacos at the time.
Yeah, Greece.
Greece, yeah.
Greece. We bring him into Chicago, and our team doctor always gives the guys a physical. And so Bert Mandelbaum says, Klopas's knee is all blown up. It's a mess. I'm like, really? Yeah. And he says, he can't play. I telex the Greek club saying, your guy has got a bad knee. Our team doctor looked at him, blah, blah, blah. So we're sending him back. And they said he wasn't injured when he left here because they did not want to pick up the insurance to fix his knee over there. So they said, you know what, just send him back. Maybe the States will pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, stuff like that where and said to the Greeks, yeah, nice talking to you. That's not even a,
Yeah.
But I felt bad for Frankie because here the guy comes over thinking he's going to play and we have to turn him right around on the plane and go from there. So, and then you're looking at injuries. The European guys had to check in with me every Monday and let me know what's going on as far as injuries or anything else. And, Wegley called and he said, my knee's kind of acting funny. I said, well, what did you play this weekend? No, I didn't. I said, okay, timeout. I'm done. I'm going to get our trainer to call you and our team doc, so I alert them and then they would try and figure out what's going on. And so that's, because you never know, a guy goes down in February, March, and it wasn't as well known as it is now. Somebody's injured in Europe, 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
That, Reeves is down. Oh, she's really, and then the social media kicks in and it's a nightmare. But so anyway, I'm just rambling here, but
yeah, no, that's what we want you to do. Share
great.
with us in 1994. What was your life like? You're gonna have to. Obviously, that's when the World Cup is taking place that summer. You guys got to make some decisions about players. Walk us through the early stages of what you remember of '94 until after the World Cup, maybe.
And how much did you have to go? Like, how much were you involved in the process of selecting the players with the coach? Like, I would be interested.
Yeah, good question. So the process. So now we have Ziggy Smith comes down and he goes on sabbatical at UCLA, and he now is our assistant coach. We have Timo Liakowski, who's our assistant coach. Steve Sampson is now on board as our assistant coach, and Militon Soskic is the goalkeeping coach. So there are 4 coaches plus Bora. And and I'm the general manager. So I would sit in the meetings, but I would never participate as far as saying, "Oh, I think Chris Henderson does a much better job than Peter Vermes, or something like." I would never. That was not my role. You have 4 coaches there; they're going to figure it out. I would tell them about the business side of it, or if we're going to release a player, once we start cutting the team down, and then I would meet Bora, and I would meet with the player, and Bora would tell them, "Listen, we're done, blah blah blah," and I would say, "Okay, here's the business side, guys. You're going to get this much pay. I'm going to ship you home on this date. You're going to leave your apartment." That type of thing. And then I did all the contracts. So, I'm signing players based on what I thought our budget would be. And fortunately, we never had to go back to the trustee, to the board of directors for that. But I had to sign the guys also. So we had guys on contracts all year round, living in Mission Viejo, living in apartments. So I'm getting your story in a long-winded way, but so they lived in apartments. They trained every day in Mission Viejo. We played a game somewhere in the world every 10 days, and we had 7. Ernie Stewart came into the picture. A few of the other guys come into the picture. So we're sitting there with 7 or 8. Eric Winald is now at Saarbrücken. So there's 7 or 8 guys in Europe, and then we have 22 guys in Mission Viejo, between 19 and 22 guys in Mission Viejo training every day. So the numbers are, we had to cut back to 23. So we got 31, 32 is our pool. So there was always this tension of, I'm here. Am I playing okay? Am I not playing okay? I got 7 guys that are going to come in. They would come in for the U.S. Cup or for a big international, and so there's always that tension of, am I going to make the side or not make the side? What are they thinking? So I really didn't have any discipline problems because the guys were really on edge that they didn't want to screw up and be knocked off. And then we're bringing 2 or 3 guys in every week that we're looking at, and that type of thing. So we're running guys through. I'm signing players. We're putting them on contracts. We got guys in Europe. So now, there was times I had to say to Bora, we got to cut a few players here. We got to let a few players go here. We just got too many. Alan and Hank are wondering why we have so many guys in camp. And most coaches want 50 guys on their roster, so they never have enough players. You know how that goes. They're always 1 player short. They don't have enough players, and but Bora was great. He was always he understood what we were trying to do. So that's when it got, and then we've got Keller. We got Keller, and we've got Jurgen Summers in Europe also as goalkeepers. Yeah. Sorry, Fred. Jurgen keeper. And now Millwall has 4 or 5 players. They got Casey, and they've got Kerr, Bruce Murray for a minute, and then they had 1 other. So there were some other guys over there that were not really. And I would go back and tour through. So once we had our schedule organized, I would go back to Europe and meet with the guys one-on-one and say, okay, here's the schedule between now for the next 4 months. These games. I'm not saying they're going to be called up, but I'm just telling you these are the games we're playing. Also, by the way, we have marketing partners that you must abide by. And that main one was you must wear Adidas head to toe footwear. So if you have a footwear contract with whomever, you cannot wear that shoe when you are playing with the national team. That includes goalkeeper gloves, anything. Adidas all the way. And our deal with Adidas was $250,000 in kind. Now,
that was my next question, actually.
I'm general manager of national teams, the women, the big team, and the 17s, The 23s was the Olympic team. So all those guys had to wear, and girls wore Adidas. So we're blowing through equipment like there's no tomorrow. The difference was the national team, I had to raise money, whereas the youth teams, whether it's the women, which I don't want to call them a youth team, but they were strictly a programming situation there. They weren't making any money. They were, even though they came back from China and won it, nobody really, it was a good thing or excited, but it was not really so even when the women came back from China, and I'm rambling here, when they came back from China, we put 3 games together, and each game we would lose around $75,000. Lose on a women's game. Go to Atlanta, women's national team play Germany, lose $75,000. So I would have to go back to the board and say, I need $100,000 to put on 3 women's games, pay them a little money, it's going to cost $200,000. Everybody wrote a hand, all in favor, aye, no problem. I go back and say, for the men's team, I need to borrow $100,000 till we play Italy on June 15th, and I'll have $1 million then, and I'll give you your 100. What are you talking about? Why? What kind of money you want that? What are you nuts? And Alan and Hank were great. They nixed it right away. They did. I never had to answer it. I would say that, and if they start up, I would go like, guys, just leave it be. You'll get your money back. Don't even. Right. But the 17s, the 23s, they were programming. If the 17s are qualifying for the World Cup and going through the CONCACAF, they're in high school anyway. So the coach, we'd say, what do you want to do? We sit with the coach, and he'd say, well, I want a Christmas camp in somewhere warm in December when I get the kids. I want a Thanksgiving camp. And in the summer, I want to go on a 10-day tour of Europe and play 5 games. And then my team administrator would put a budget to that, saying, okay, it's going to cost $10,000. They put the $10,000. And once it's approved by the board, and I just turned it over, you're a program. Don't go over 10 grand. Just go. I only stepped in. I was like a general manager of a baseball team. I didn't step in down below unless there was problems. I went to some qualifiers, but that was a programming issue. If we had player issues or a coach problem, making a coaching change, then I was in the middle of that. But, they're going to Orlando for a 10-day training camp. I wasn't, that was all programming.
Yeah. So, what special moments could you share with us about the actual World Cup in 1994?
Wow. I mean, it was, we were in Mission Viejo, so we had all the international press was down in our training camp. Every day we had somebody different down there. It was really, but I think, some of I guess to start off with, our first game is against Switzerland in Detroit. And the Silver Dome does not have air conditioning, and it does not have heat in the general big part. Silver Dome, if you recall, was blown up. It's an inflatable, really. Right. And so all the doors have revolving doors and stuff, so you can't. And I don't know if you guys went to Detroit or not.
I was at that game.
I did.
Yep. It was like 9,000 degrees in there, wasn't it?
It was.
So so now they're going to put grass for the first time on a synthetic surface indoors. And so FIFA is pooping their pants because they're like, what do you, and so they come in 3-foot squares, this grass. And they came in a truck, big truck, and they come out 3-foot squares. They laid it all out in the field, and so it was all grass. And they started watering it and everything else, and it created its own atmosphere. They had a cloud in there, and they're like, you can think about it, It's a greenhouse, right? A massive greenhouse, but it's so high it created its own cloud, and they're like losing their mind. So we were not aware of that at the time. So we roll into town, and we were there for the night before the game. We trained for a half hour. The grass looked okay.
The first time they were on that field was the day before.
Yeah, no.
Holy shit.
Switzerland was on for 30 minutes, and we were on for 30 minutes.
Wow.
And that was it. So, and it is so hot in there. I mean, it is ridiculously hot.
For those people that maybe are new to the game and have fallen, like kind of caught on within this World Cup, that tournament was 24 teams, right?
Yes.
So we hadn't expanded to the 32 team system like it is now. And then this next World Cup, we're going to expand even more. How would you look at this next World Cup that we're about to approach when it comes to like managing the team and how to play games? You already know you're qualified. How similar is what we're about to see to what you had to deal with in '94? Given that you already.
Question. Thanks for bringing that up, because that's exact. So, the whole when you're not qualifying, you're not forced into a lot of high pressure situations. I mean, when you're qualifying, you're feeling it, and so that creates another atmosphere. And when we were struggling, we were trying to find games and stuff, but we weren't qualifying. And that's when Bora made sure we went to El Salvador, Honduras, and played down there. And it's crazy. I mean, they do some crazy things down there, and play Mexico just to feel the atmosphere. Although we know, in 1990, they were so worried about how can a third world country, they don't have a pro league. They sent over a college all-star team. 94 is going to be a disaster in the United States. This is a third world country in soccer. And they were worried about all the wrong things. We are a big event country. We can do this stuff with our eyes closed.
Right.
And they were worried about, I don't know what they were worried about. And so, obviously it was never a problem. But qualifying, we didn't have to qualify. And now the U.S. doesn't have to qualify again. And
So how important is that Gold Cup leading up to that then? In '93, you played Mexico in the '93 Gold Cup final at Azteca, right?
Right.
And I believe it was a 4-0 loss to Mexico, if I remember. It was a shellacking, right?
We got hammered down there. It was, we were thrown to the dog. It was just, we got hammered.
So is that Gold Cup now, like this upcoming Gold Cup, going to be just as important as far as having competitive games leading into the next?
Well, think about, exactly. That's exactly right. So where do you get your competitive games? They're back in Copa America. So they get that, the Gold Cup. They're going to struggle getting into Europe because they have the Nations League. They have their own qualifying. I mean, that Wednesday, Saturday cadence between league play, qualifying, Nations Cup, there's just no dates where we had some dates where we could get in and get in this. And believe me, Spain and those guys weren't, we were lucky. FIFA put some hammer on them a little bit and said, hey, let the U.S. play you guys, Spain. Come on, Morocco. Northern Ireland, come on, let them play. England said, well, you can play our B team.
Yeah.
They were so snotty. Like I couldn't, I was so happy.
They didn't qualify.
I was so happy when we beat them in Boston. Wallace had anyway. So it's very important. And I'm segueing. So yes. So where do you get that cadence? Where do you get that buildup? You can criticize him for changing the team around and this and that during qualifying, during friendlies. That thing we can always throw darts at that and say it wasn't. But to find the quality games that mean something and to get enough games in there where, you're no longer a factor. We don't need to play you, U.S. We're in qualifications. Don't bother us. We got to get,
Yeah.
where our only focus was we in 94, we have to field a team that is competitive. If we can get through the first round, that's even better. But, Alan and Hank, don't worry about the youth teams. Let the women develop as they develop. You got to make sure that we are as focused as we can be. Bora does not have to go to coaches' clinics and start talking about philosophy of where is he going with, how does he want to build? Get us through the first round, period.
Yeah.
Right? We have nothing but one focus. And rightly so, because we can't be embarrassed in our own country.
Yeah. So we go ahead. You left off, about Switzerland.
So so there was so you talk about memorable moments. There we are, playing indoors on a grass field that has never been played on before, against Switzerland. So here we are kicking off for our first time. So that was really a big. And a lot of people, when you go from a U.S. team, we had all our marketing partners. You get into the World Cup, there's different marketing partners. And one of those was we were Gatorade as U.S., we were Powerade in the World Cup. So everything was Powerade on the benches, teams, training, and everything. So we didn't use Powerade until we got to Detroit, because we were still training at our facility there. So we were using Gatorade, no problem. So we get the night before the game, I get a call about 2 a.m. It's Renato saying, we're down here with the team doctor, and Eric Winalta has broken out in hives everywhere. And this is 3 a.m. So I get down, there's the doctor, so the problem is, because the red dye in the Powerade caused him a react. Are you aware of this?
Yeah, he had to come off at halftime, right?
No. So are you aware? You guys aware of this? The
Go
fact?
ahead, tell us what you
absolutely.
do, but it's always good to hear from a different person to tell it.
So at 3 o'clock in the morning, who did you hear it from? Hank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he told me he used to wear Reebok, and I think he told me at a meeting the whole story.
Oh, Ronaldo did?
Go on.
Yeah,
No, you were talking about probably Fernando.
but because he scored the goal in the game, and they had to take him off. And then
It came on.
Came
on late. He came on after, because so he's down there. He's all and so we have to. There's a 24-hour fax line that goes into the. Trying to think what it's called. If you want to determine if there's any medications that can or cannot be used on a player, you fax it into the med line. And they came back and said you can't use Benadryl, you can't use this, you can't use that. So now we can't use anything really. So Winalda is freaking out, and I'm trying to be politically correct here. So he goes back to his room, and I call Bora down. And Bora says we can't bring Eric to the team meal, because we had an early team meal, because I think our game was 1 o'clock. It was 1 o'clock. Don't bring Eric down to the team meal, because he'll be so disruptive, right? So Renato tries to keep him up in his room. We told him we're going to give him food, relax him up there, and all that kind of stuff. And he pops into the team room. Look at me! I've got these things all over me. Okay, so he's now, caused a little bit of chaos there. We go to the stadium, and there is a picket line, like where there's a press can talk to you as you're walking from the bus to the locker room, right? I said to Dean, keep him on the bus until the whole team goes in, and then the press will leave, and then we bring Eric in, right? All that happens. So then Dean walks in the locker room, and he's like, I said, oh, no, he's on the loose, right? Yeah. He's on the press line. Look at me. I got this stuff on there. And the poor guy is broken out in hives. He can't even take Benadryl. It's really unfair to him. We dress him. He doesn't start. He comes on late in the game.
I didn't remember that.
We're down 1-0. We have a set piece. What was that? 25 yards out, 22. And he hits it up into the D, up in the triangle, and we equalize. Only freaking Eric Winalda would be that.
In the story, he wore 2 different shoes. Isn't that the story? He wore 2 different
No,
shoes. No?
not that I'm aware of. Maybe
Well, he had to wear. Didn't he have to wear somebody because his feet swelled up, and he sort of had to wear somebody else's, extra pair of shoes, extra pair of boots, because he couldn't get into his. This is what Hank said. He couldn't get into his regular, his regular stuff.
This sounds like one of those stories that just gets better and better every time it's told,
there you go.
right?
There you go.
Like, it wasn't a big deal, but then as time has gone on, it was a really big deal.
And time goes on, he had elephantitis. And he was
Set piece from 80 yards away.
Yeah. So there you have it. So that was it. And then it slowly went down. Then they gave us approval to give him some Benadryl, small doses. And, you could take your chances on the drug test because they just pulled names out of a hat. You could be a bench player. And you could
So talk about the Colombia game a little bit, Bill.
Okay.
Surrounding
One last thing, until Maradona said that FIFA was the mafia. Funny enough, he got drug tested the next day and failed. Oh man, strange. Sorry. So we tie Switzerland, and now we're playing Colombia. And Colombia lost to Romania 2-0 or 3-0. Can't remember now. But now Romania is on 3 points. Colombia has no points. We have 1. And I'm saying we are going to get murdered.
Yeah.
When we play them, we're going to get murdered.
Romania beat Colombia 3-1.
Yeah.
In that match.
So Colombia has no points. And they have to play us. Now, we have played Colombia 26 times, maybe. I think we tied them twice. Maybe tied them 3 times. I don't think we ever beat them. And they've got Asprilla and Rincon on the flanks, who are probably the 2 fastest human beings in the world, and Valderrama in the middle. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be ugly. Yeah, this is going to really, And so, when we get to the stadium, we're doing our thing, and I know what it was. So this is just a bit of a little insight that I've never told anybody this in public. So Bora is very superstitious, and every time we have a team meal, I would say, okay, Bora, I'm leaving. And he'd say, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to my room. And he says, come to his room. I go to his room. We just shoot the breeze. I never ask him to line up. I never ask him about players. We just talk about stuff, unless he volunteers it. So Lee Koyman was injured when we played Switzerland, and he didn't tell us. And he worked through it. And that's what happened when we got scored on in that first goal. So now I'm saying, okay, Koyman's not playing. Who are we going to put in the middle? And what's his team going to be in the back, right? So we did team meal. Bora, I'm leaving. He says, come up to my room. I said, okay, come up to his room. We're just sitting there. The first time ever in 60 games, I said, so Bora, what's the team going to be today? And he says, I'm going to put Fernando Clavio out on the right side. And I didn't say anything. And he says, what you think? And I said, he said, what you think? I said, you're asking me my opinion, right? He said, yeah, what you think? I said, I think you've lost your fucking mind. And let me explain that. Fernando had a hamstring that he had been nursing for 6 weeks. He had not played in a match for 6 weeks. And Fernando's fast. Fernando's a great guy. Rest in peace. But, so that's why I said, you're going to put him out there with either Esprit or Rincon out on the flank, the fastest guys on earth right now, and you're going to put a guy in there who has a hammy who has not been tested. He'll be okay. So Bora gets on the phone and calls Fernando, has Fernando come up to his suite, right? Fernando walks in and he sees me there, which, and he's looking, he's like, what did I do wrong? What's going on? And he said, so Boris says, Fernando, you want to play today? Fernando goes, yeah, of course I do. Bill doesn't think you should play today. I said, time out, Fernando.
That's not what I said.
Time out, Fernando. I said, listen, you've had that hammy. We don't know if you're match fit, and that was my concern. Are you going to be match fit? And of course, he says, "Oh, I can play. My hammy's fine." And blah blah blah. And of course, Fernando had the game of his life. Of course, speaking Spanish, he made sure that Rincon and Esprit knew all of their heritage in Spanish.
Yeah.
And he just, and all that. And then, of course, we're playing, we score, then we get the own goal and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, we win. I go into the locker room, and Bora's there, and I said to Fernando, I said to Bora, can you bend over? Because there's a horseshoe somewhere up your ass. So far up your ass. He says, my friends. I said to him, too, when Fernando left, I said, no, you're the coach. You do what you want to do. You're the one that's going to answer to the press, not me. You just asked me my opinion, and I never gave you my opinion. So, and he said, oh, my friend, but he's like, but yeah, so I said, yeah, you got to bend over. There's a horseshoe so far up your ass. And then, of course, we are on our way to play Romania. And we're down at our hotel in Dana Point. And Dean Linke comes up and he says, the guy that scored the own goal, they just killed him. He was killed last night, murdered last night. And so we're standing outside the bus. Our guys are loading on the bus. So I called Bora and I said, Bora, they're going to announce that he'd been murdered. And, what do we do? And he says, I think we just have to tell the guys what happened. So we did. It was a sobering moment. The guys were like, shit, that's crazy. And we went up and tied. We lost to Romania. And Harksey got a yellow card, second yellow, and he couldn't play in the next game.
Yeah, he missed the Brazil game, maybe.
Yeah. So we picked Brazil. We end up, and we're watching because it's going to be Argentina and it's Brazil, and things kept changing. And finally, we're playing Brazil in San Francisco, which is their home field. And we get to our hotel, and there's Brazilians everywhere, and it's noisy as all get out. It is so noisy. And they weren't picking on us. They were just partying, right? And it's like, what are we going to do here? Well, about 10 or 10:30, our security guys went down, and they dispersed. We didn't hear a word out of them for the rest of the evening. They were very, very polite and very, And we played that game, and early in the game, Ramos took an elbow, sitting wide open. I mean, and they beat us with 10 men, and we weren't even close. We were not even close. And there we have it. So yeah, that's some of the stories, I guess.
Gotcha.
Amazing.
Super amazing. Wow. Obviously, real quick, EV, from there he went to form Golden Viking Sport, which everyone here knows, I think, except for Ryan, distributed Diodora back in the day. So Some
Yeah.
great stories there, Bill. Some absolute great stories. Evie, I'm gonna send it back to you here.
Well,
Very blessed, guys. Thanks for letting me vent for a while and ramble.
Hey, this is for us. It's golden. I think to hear these stories and to I appreciate, Bill, what you said about Harksey and those guys being pioneers, but even before those guys were you and Hank and Dr. Myers and Van Taylor and then then there was sort of the second generation, which was me and Greg and all that pathway that you guys laid for us, we took advantage of, and I have great appreciation for what you've done for the game.
Well,
And
I'd like to take the credit, but thank you. I mean, when Hank and Alan came on board, their vision was we have to be competitive. We have to run this thing like a professional organization. We have to do our best to get things going. And Bora is a very unique guy. And I can't, and I'm sure all the players will tell you, we had a film room. Well, we had a room where we ate and had a film. And Bora kept it so simple for 2 years. How he's going to set up the defense. How we have to play not to lose. The problem is you always go in, we're going to – no. You're in the pool play. You play not to lose. Yeah, you get a point. You steal 3. You're not France where you open up or you're not one of the big boys. You just open up, and we didn't have that luxury. We could nick a goal and hold our ground. So be it. Nobody got any pretty losses, it's all whatever it is. And so, yeah, Alan and Hank's total focus, Bill, just get the team as much as we can. Keep them isolated, not isolated, but focus. Let's get these guys where we need them. And Bora did a great job.
Yeah, and mission accomplished for your part of it, because like you say, you were not only helping the team, but you were running interference for Bora so that everybody could stay focused on what on the one thing they had to do. And Bone, what was Bill's? You had mentioned his coaching record at FIU.
56, 18-1.
Okay, so
5
Bill.
years. 5
Okay,
years.
so I just want to go on record here saying that I contributed to that coaching record when FIU played us at Warren Wilson, and I think it was either 6 or 7 I let in. So that was one game, Bill, that added to your stellar coaching career.
There you go. Yeah.
It was 6-0 at Mark Light Field.
6-0 at Mark Light Field.
Way to have that one ready, Greg. That's good.
Yeah. Remember the pitcher's mound that was like just outside of the penalty area because we were playing on a baseball field. Yeah.
Yeah, the days of all this stuff, just crazy.
Yeah.
Bill, did you coach Munga?
No. Excuse me. I was at the Strikers.
Okay.
And I was assistant coach, director of player personnel. And the one thing I can say about coming out of the Dolphins organization, they understood scouting because NFL,
Yeah.
And so they really believed in scouting. So I went out and saw a lot of games and all that. So one day, my secretary, this guy says, there's this guy out here that he claims he's from, where's he from? Liberia? Munga, I'm trying to think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. He's outside here and he wants to talk to you. So he comes in. It's Munga. I want to try out for the team, blah, blah, blah. I said, Munga, right now we have 6 national team captains on our side, on the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. 6 national team captains. The chances of you getting a visa as a foreign player are very slim. Have you ever thought about going to college? Yeah, well, I thought about it. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call down to the FIU coach, Carl Kremser.
Yeah.
I have no idea whether Munga can kick a ball. I don't know. This is the guy I sat across the table from for 3 minutes and explained to him the facts of life as to the quality of players that the Strikers bring in as internationals, right?
Yeah.
So I send him down to Kremser, and you know the rest of the story. He's got every freaking scoring record. He's
Incredible.
Yeah.
you know, he's done it all. And yeah. And every time I saw Kremser, I kept saying, "You're welcome." And he says, "For what?" I said, "You're such a knucklehead, Kremser. For Munga. That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. Yeah.
He made you look like a great coach." You know?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the Munga story.
Okay.
Played
Well,
for you.
Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to visit with us, and we appreciate it. And
My pleasure. Anytime, guys. We always got stories.
we'd love to have you back on it.
Oh, I have a couple things that I want to get into at another time.
okay.
We have to.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
we
to
gotta
have you back on.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
Because there's some
absolutely.
names that came up during some digging that I want to hear more about.
Like what name?
Lamar Hunt for one. I would love to hear more about Lamar Hunt, given that the U.S. Open Cup is named after him. I think that's
Yeah.
a big piece of U.S. soccer history that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the U.S. know him for his time with the Chiefs, right? Like,
Yeah.
and they
No,
know
you're
that the
right. He's
AFC Championship is named after him in football as well. But I would say the majority of people that hear about the U.S. Open Cup don't realize it's named after him. So,
Or
I
why?
think that would
You
be
know,
interesting.
and
Or
again,
why?
there's your generation. There's your generation. One quick thing. We played in the Kirin Cup, Kirin beer, Japanese beer in Japan. And our game was against Hungary. Our first game was Hungary, and the second game was against the Japanese national team. And we're in a hotel, and Puskás is in our hotel.
Oh wow.
He gets off the elevator. I see him. I'm like, "That's Puskás." I get my picture taken with him, right? Said to our players, "That's Puskás." They're like, "Who's Puskás?"
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So that generation, you know.
Yeah.
So who's Pele? Who's Puskás? You know, on and on you go.
Yeah.
You talk about obscurity. How many times they see Puskás play? Probably twice in his lifetime. You know.
Right.
Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing again. But yeah.
No, I mean, it's great. It's great.
The
All
show's
right,
all
boys.
about.
Anytime, we'll knock it around anytime.
Okay.
I'll
Well,
see all of you in Philadelphia or not.
Yeah, not me, unfortunately.
I'll be there.
I don't know yet.
You're not sure?
I turned 55 that weekend.
Oh,
Yeah. So you're going to be.
So you
trying
want
relive
you
your
want to be in
25
Philly
year
and
old
Either convention or Vegas.
Yeah. 55. Yeah.
Yeah. Philly or Vegas?
Oh, yeah. Are you going to Vegas or not?
I don't know.
So where do you live now? You're in
Boulder, Colorado,
Oh.
for about 12 years.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you got, you know. Okay.
So I got to, the home of Dave Banning and occasionally Eric Lauder.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm looking forward to seeing Banning. I haven't seen him for what a good guy he is.
He is a good guy.
Such a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's done a nice job with a niche business.
He has.
Real
That's
nice
true.
job.
Yeah. So,
hey, John Bo, I want to ask this question since you played in the NAI tournament.
Yep.
Is it true? It was based the advancement. I heard the story the other day that Wilmington College was playing
We played them.
Belmont Abbey.
Mm-hmm.
They were up 1-0,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed 2. So on
Oh.
purpose, they scored an own goal to go into overtime, and then unfortunately you didn't get the PKs. You guys beat them, and they didn't advance.
Yeah, we played Westmont, who had just beaten UCLA, and Wilmington. Yeah.
Wow.
And we lost to West. We upset them like 20-2, and their goalkeeper had a fucking blinder. And
No, this guy said you played incredible.
I didn't play that game.
Oh, okay. He thought.
well, you didn't make any mistakes, so you did good.
Exactly. Zero.
Incredible.
Were you not on the team then, or not?
Oh yeah, I was, but
Okay.
actually, Brett got really hot at the end of the season. He was the MVP of the tournament.
Wow.
Oh,
Goalkeeper, yeah.
Okay. Just weird though how you could do that, right? Because what no one says is Wilmington College was up for sportsman of the tournament.
Right.
Right.
They did that, then
Right.
out went that award.
Yeah. Well, the NAIA tournament used to be like a World Cup setup. You were at
It's
groups,
great.
and yeah.
Groups
it
of
was
3, and you
Yeah.
played Monday, Wednesday,
Yeah.
and
And if you went through, then you So,
yeah. Speaking of West Virginia, like Bill was talking about, later on, you had West Virginia Wesley and Alderson Broadus who could beat fucking Brazil.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Those guys are good.
You know, you look at the last, up until this year, Um, it was University of Charleston, Division II, was national champion.
Mhm.
Just down the road, 30 miles down the road, was Marshall, D1 champion.
Yeah.
Crazy.
In West Virginia, you had both national champions 30 miles apart from each other.
Crazy.
In West
Yeah.
by God, Virginia.
West by God, Virginia. All started by Bill Nuttall, Hank Steinbrecher, and Dr. Greg Myers.
There you go.
There you go. There
We'll
you go.
take full credit for that. Don't forget that.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. Well, Happy New Year to everybody. We'll do it again, Bill. Thank you very much again for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Believe me.
That was great.
Yeah, that was great. That was,
It was
great.
fun.
Really appreciate it.
It
So-
was. Thank you.
All
All right, guys.
See you all.
Talk to you later.
Philadelphia.
See you
See
later.
you next time.
Yep.